Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Amplify Your Business. Today, I am talking to Dennis Humphrey. He is the co-founder over at Eden Business Concepts, which is a business that's helping other businesses. And so I'm really excited to dig into that. But first, I want to welcome you to the show today, Dennis. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hey, thanks, Lance. It's a pleasure to be with you today.
Okay, so Dennis, before we get into anything else, I want to hear from you. What are three things that you think every entrepreneur needs to know or understand?
Number one, top of the list, don't get yourself isolated. Isolation kills. And then as your business grows and you scale, you will be isolated at the top of the house. And that's never a good thing for a leader. So
Yeah.
don't isolate. I would also say um, lean into resources that are available to you. That goes, it's kind of secondary to don't be isolated. When someone wants to help you, look at it deeply. The third thing I would say is be okay with what you're not good at. When I'm over 50 now, so one of the beauties of being over 50 is I know what I'm good at. I know what I'm not. I don't worry about what I'm not good at. I source that.
Hmm.
And so the quicker you can get to that, the quicker you're going to make better decisions on the resources that you bring in close to build your business.
Yeah, it's so true. We get so caught up in trying to wear so many hats as entrepreneurs, right? That
Yeah.
it's never going to be as efficient as what it could be, or as effective as what it could be if you had people just focused on those areas where it's either something you don't like to do, or you just don't have the skills to do it, right?
Right. Right.
Yeah. Yeah, and also that fallacy that nobody's going to be able to do it as good as I can. I know I've fallen into that trap once or twice.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's a bad one because it sets the tone for the organization moving forward as it scales.
Yeah, yeah. And now, speaking of the tone of organizations and just really understanding that organism that every business is, and the people within it, this is your playground, man. Like, this is what
Yeah.
you do day in and day out over at Eden Business Concepts, right? So why don't you tell the audience a little bit more about what problems you guys are trying to solve, who you're working with, what you're doing?
So typically we'll come in, a leader will engage us and have us come in. And the big task is, excuse me, is going to be workforce optimization and culture. We're going to poke around in those two areas. And a thread that's going to run through that are two big themes. One is understanding your motivation as a leader, understanding your people's motivation. And the second one is how do you manage conflict?
Mm,
Because how a company manages conflict, that can create money or take money.
mm,
And so we will work in that area. Oftentimes with leaders, we will help them try to figure out why they make the decisions they make, and that gets to a motivational question. And we have a model where we have three different categories. We have respect based people, we have value based people, and we have approval based people. You got these three people in your organization. They're all motivated by different things, but when you figure out what their motivation is, you actually speak to a kind of a deep part of them. So, just give an example, a respect based person. I'm going to talk about how great his ideas are, or I'm going to say, you often know where we need to go. That's music to their ears. An approval based person, I'm going to tell them, hey, we really like to have you around here. You bring something to us that nobody has. We like you. We approve of you. And a value based person, we're going to continually say, hey, you see opportunities we don't. Uh, you know, whenever you bring something, that always brings us value, that always adds to us. And so that's where we work in that motivational space, and we help leaders and their people understand when you figure out motivation, uh, how a person's motivated, an employee's motivated, we can speak their language, they settle down, they work better, they feel more comfortable, and we manage conflict better. because we understand how they actually do conflict, and we can do that in a more productive way. All of that really starts to set a tone workplace culture.
Mm.
And then, beyond that, we can look, right people, right seats kind of thing. But if you don't start with who the person is, how they're motivated, and how they're wired up, you're going to miss a lot of things.
Yeah, and it's one of those things which is easy to understand how that impacts the overall culture of the organization, which therefore then impacts the success of the organization. So we understand that intellectually, the importance of
Hmm.
this, but the execution side of things is often very lacking. Why do you think that is? Is it
Yeah,
just a function of the people at the top just being busy, and so it kind of gets away on them, or what's going on there? Why aren't we doing a
sure.
better job of that?
Well, one of it is, as entrepreneurs, as they grow their businesses, learning to let go becomes a fundamental thing. A lot's on the line for them. This is
Mm,
their baby. you know
yep.
Someone starts a business and she's worked that thing up to a couple $1 million top line revenue. There's a lot of significance in that, and what we find is when we help we help entrepreneurs find their significance beyond the business they built, they are better leaders. But without somebody really kind of having those conversations with them, um, it can get lost real easy. Because success is intoxicating and it's wonderful and it blesses a ton of people, but it also can frame a leader's identity. And
Mm.
entrepreneurs that can't find their identity outside the thing they're building, they're vulnerable.
That's really interesting. I want to explore that just a little bit more because you are bang on. Like we work sometimes for years and years and years growing these businesses, and they are our little baby, right? We've definitely invested a tremendous amount of effort and time and emotion into it, and so it's really difficult, I think, for a lot of people to separate themselves from that business, which also, some other guests, excuse me, that I've had the pleasure of talking to talk about, how do you set your business up for that exit strategy and so on. And if you're not able to
Oh,
separate yourself from it, well, then that's a mess too. But
yeah.
there's a lot of reasons that you need to do that separation. What do you do, or how do you coach an entrepreneur to best separate themselves from the business, so that they can find that, what you said, significance beyond the business?
Sure. So this comes back to a key phrase that we use. We have a phrase, you'll either flourish or flounder in all your important relationships based on how well you know your heart. And what do we mean by that? It's just coming back to the leader. How well does that leader actually know themselves?
Hmm.
We've all seen in movies or in other situations where here's a great leader, but and they're leading this cause really well, but there's a lot of wreckage in the wake, and so we do help leaders figure out what's your motivation here, because out of your motivation you're going to make a series of decisions in a certain way, and there's a lot of upside to that. I'll give you an example, like what we would call a respect based person. They often have clarity. They can see where it needs to go, they can see all the moving parts, they bring a lot of wisdom in how they operate, because they're able to consume a lot of information, non-emotional. The challenge is, so for that kind of leader, if they don't have all the information they need to feel like successful, the dark side of their motivation is they're going to start pushing people for clarity. They're going to start creating a lot of noise because they feel like their failure buttons getting pushed.
Hmm.
And so what we do is we go with a leader and with a leader's people, and we say, let's find what your root motivation is, your core, how you are motivated relationally.
Hmm.
Figure that piece out. Figure the upside and the dark side, and try to work out of the dark side into the upside of it. And a lot of the noise in leadership will go away, and you'll actually be able to make decisions with a lot more clarity.
Hmm. I love some of the terminology you use from the dark side right into the upside. Yeah, And you've been at this for a while now, right? It's I think you said before we
Yeah.
hit the record button, 20 years of experience doing this with businesses, right?
Yeah, yeah. Or larger organizations, a lot of it originally in the nonprofit higher ed space.
Yeah. So now one of the other questions that comes to mind too is, once you've worked with these people to understand, the different types of people or personalities or whatever, you mentioned the three: the respect, the approval, and the value based types of people within the organization. So it's not enough to just understand who these people are, but then understand
Yeah.
how to manage them for the best outcome as
Mhm.
well. So when you're working with a
Yeah.
leadership team, is that the biggest stumbling point, or the point where things start to kind of fall apart, is they'll do the initial training but then the execution isn't there? I'm just curious.
It is. It is. And the reason it gets challenging is because we tend to operate out of the thing we're most comfortable in.
Yeah.
And that's why you will see a leader surround him or herself with a lot of people like him or herself, right? Because that's comfort. I know this. This is predictable to me. So the part when we start to get in with leaders and start to figure out, okay, who are your people? How are they wired up? What are their motivations? A big piece of us is saying, not just know this, but you're going to need to speak it, even if it's really hard for you or you don't value it. So like a respect-based person, you know, has to approach an approval-based person. Well, respect-based people don't need your approval. They already know what they want to do. They already know what their goal is. And so now they have an approval-based employee.
Mm.
And they need to learn to soften their tone. They need to learn to speak the language of approval to that employee. And when they do, that employee calms down, leans in, and they need to do this desperately because approval based people will hide problems because they don't want to be the messenger that gets shot.
Mm.
And so what we do as part of our work is to coach them through speaking the other language, actually valuing the other motivational language that they hadn't historically thought of.
Interesting. And so how quickly can an organization, the leadership, turn the ship around if there's a bit of this chaos around managing conflict and managing people? Is this something that when you guys come in and work with these organizations, you can right that ship fairly quickly, or is this just an ongoing, thing that they're constantly needing to work at?
Well, like any entrepreneurial endeavor, the leader has to buy in, and we won't
Yeah.
engage someone if we don't think that a leader is teachable and open. We don't want to waste their time or their money and our time. So classically it does have to start at the top, but yes, very quickly we can turn people around because we what we do is we give them a common language. We give them a very simple common language. And once you give a group a language of conflict, now they're all speaking the same thing. Now they all understand each other. They can move fairly quickly. Granted, there are, you have your typical other, human resource, behavioral coaching issues, development issues. And some people are more open than others. But when a group will engage the language that we give them very quickly, and you know you can write some things in a matter of a day, depending on the severity of it. Other things will take time, but starts with the leader, a common language, and a common conflict process, and that's very effective.
Yeah. Yeah. So I just want to switch gears just a little bit here, Dennis, and just talk a little bit more about your journey as an entrepreneur as well, because you shared with me before we hit the record button that you've been at this for 20 years or so, mostly, as a consultant, contractor, freelancer, whatever. And it's only been in the last 5 years that you and your partner decided to come together. And this is somebody that you've known for many, many years, come together and form Eden Business Concepts. I'm curious, what's the motivation there? And why did it take you, 15 years, I guess, to form the partnership and the company?
I think it took that long for two reasons. One, just to gain enough. traction and experience in the models we were developing to say,
Mm.
yeah, these work. So we had a lot of experience, a lot of history. The other thing was really late in the game coming to a realization of we actually have something to say. We've been in the nonprofit space and the higher ed space, and those are just very different than the business environment. They have different sets of values and relations work differently.
Yep.
And so I think part of it might have been our own sense of inadequacy that we really didn't have anything to say into that space until
Mm.
someone came along and said, "Look what you're doing. We need this." And both my business partner and I operate. We've historically operated kind of opportunistically and at invitation, right? So we started to realize in the higher ed space with your network and nonprofit, you get a lot of invitations to do stuff, and you can run on that. When you switch over to business, you really do have to be more intentional, targeted marketing, your brand. And we just realized we would just have to grow up and go do that.
Mm.
Um, but it was a combination of building experience and then believing that, yeah, we actually do have something to say. And we stepped into the business world. Our big desire in working with business owners and people in business and at all levels is this: we want workplaces to be life giving. We want someone to walk into work, give their solid 8 hours, go home and still have enough in the bank, the emotional bank account for their family, their friends, the important things to them.
Yep.
And that's why we ended up taking a lot of our conflict work into the business world, because this is an energy suck. This is an emotional energy drain that people come home and they don't have enough for family and friends. And we just want to see that changed. The second thing, which we grew up in higher ed with, uh, we started to see trouble in generations, not talking to one another, not working well enough together. So we have a strong heart for emerging leaders. So that's why we're always getting to the leader, and then we're immediately asking the leader, who are your up and comers? Who are your people in your 20s? Let's do well with them, because by the time they hit 30, they're ready to just tear it up.
Yeah, it's such an interesting thing when you talk about I think the journey of your own business as well as being able to look into all these other organizations that you've worked with and really dissect them and pick the parts and the things that make the most sense in terms of the way that you're going to build your business. I'm curious, with that exposure that lends into all of these different types of businesses out there, how has that informed the way that you have set up or structured or are growing your business?
It's probably helped us and hurt us. I think the
Mm.
area we're still growing in is kind of the um, targeted, pointed brand, and getting that excuse me, getting that message out there. Um, like I say, we've grown organically, and now we're at a spot where we're busy enough. We need to be more targeted. We need to select our clients better. Um, we need to reach some new and different clients. So it's really been this evolution out of kind of this higher ed. Let's be cerebral about it. Let's be all about ideas. And then stepping into the business world, which you still need the cerebral work and the ideas, but if you got to put legs on it.
Mm.
And that's been the journey for us. I think as um, two people who've come out of higher ed, have spent most of our life in higher ed, going, it moves a lot faster in business. The concerns are different in business. You're not working on grant money anymore.
Yeah.
You're working on a revenue stream and a cash flow,
Yeah.
and that's just a whole different world that we've had to grow into and are still growing into.
So I'm curious then, as you reflect back on 20 years of working with organizations and the last 5 years, maybe a little bit more focused on businesses. How do you personally define success for your business? What is success?
For us, success is thriving. So we're going
Yeah.
to thrive on two sides. We're going to work with people, and we're going to start to see that leader thrive, and then we're going to start to see that leader's people thrive. That's that idea. They leave work and they still have stuff in the bank.
Mm.
And for us, the thriving is economics. Just we're just trying to generate our revenue and pay for ourselves, and we're not money motivated. Money doesn't drive us, but businesses run on money, and so there all those measures of success of revenue are important to us just as much as, and that's part of the thriving model of our business. Look at our scorecard. Are we thriving this month? Are we moving and thriving? I think the other big thing too, as friends who known each other all all our 30 plus years we've known each other, um, working in the nonprofit space as co-academics and co-consultants, when you step into business with a friend, you learn stuff about that person that you didn't know as well or as deeply, or maybe you knew it in your head, but now it's your own conflict. Oh, you make money decisions like that. Oh, you make, sales
Mhm.
decisions like that, you know.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
So that's been another fun part of the journey as my business partner. I just really, getting to know each other all over again in a different way. And we're deep friends and best friends, but we started having conflict and we had to work our model on ourselves.
What was that like? I'd imagine that's kind of difficult in a way, right? I mean, sure you have the common language and everything, but it's difficult when you're looking inward as opposed to outward, right?
Oh, sure. It's the classic thing of the contractor whose house is never finished, right?
Yeah, yeah,
So we're helping all these other people, and then we're having to go, oh my, our house needs some work on. And
yeah,
and so we really did early on had to have some very critical decisions and some heated decisions at times. Simple stuff like when some tech went sideways on us, now we're in a conflict and we're pausing going, what's going on with us here? And we went back to the very things we work with our people. It's like our motivations.
yeah,
My motivation for approval and his motivation to be respected and right, those started to clash. And we just had to take a pause and go, okay, all right, this is where we are.
yeah,
Let's work our system on ourselves.
yeah. I'm also curious. So, you've been at this now, the business side of it, the forming the corporation and that 5 years ago. So, what's easier today now after 5 years than what it was, I guess, at the beginning days of Eden
Sure.
Business Concepts?
I think what's easier for me now is kind of the networking marketing piece.
Hmm. Yep.
Early on, you're starting something, you have that feeling like I got to get a sale, I got to get a sale. Now, that really pivot to, hey, I want to get to know this person. Maybe I can help them. And so it becomes a broader thing. Like I'm glad to have a coffee with anyone and talk to them about their thing, knowing that the goodwill of relationship really does pay off down the road.
Yeah.
When people feel cared for, they're likely to come back. And that's the way that worked with our other business. People felt like we actually cared for them. We weren't just trying to nail a contract.
Yep.
And
Yep.
so I love nothing better than have coffee with someone and go, these three people you actually need to talk to, and then making that connection, and then seeing
Yep.
them thrive because of that connection. That really is exciting, and that makes business building a whole lot more fun.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so funny that you mentioned that, right? Because one of the mottos we have at Ampla Media is that we give first, and one of the ways that we give, like, there's a lot of different things we do there, but one way is that we are very, very intentional about creating those connections for people, and so we'll go out of our way to try to figure out that. So it's part of just our DNA. So as an organization. And so there's a lot more time spent by our team thinking about how we can help others connect with other people than what I think,
Mm-hmm.
when you look at it on the surface, where you go, well, that's not a profit, driver initially anyway. I think there's a lot of benefits that come from it, um, but it does actually play itself into a lot of good business development credit, I guess you could say, that we're putting in the bank every time, because you when you can place yourself kind of at as the impetus of these collisions of amazing people and great ideas and opportunities, then there's just good things that come back to you no matter what. So
Yeah.
it's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think you're right. And yeah, it may not be now, but it might be a year and a half or 2 years from now.
Yep. Yeah. 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 It's really amazing how well that works. Now, if you could send a letter back in time to your younger entrepreneurial self, what would you tell yourself, Dennis? What would be in that letter if you could do that? What conversation would you have?
Yeah, I think for me, what that would look like is Lowe says something like this. It says, "Look, people will listen to you, and you're going to be able to influence them in a real positive direction, and you need to be confident that that's something you can do well." I think the
Mm,
other thing I would say, just on experience, is I would tell my younger self, "Look, people have a good experience with you. They feel cared for when you engage them." And that would speak directly to just my own personal journey of just feeling inadequate in some ways, or like I'm not smart enough or good enough. And so I would go back to the younger self and say, look, just keep doing what you're doing, trust your gut. You think well and you care well, and people pick up on that. um, and I can say that
excellent.
because stuff that I think sometimes is just it was just an off the cuff comment, and someone comes back to me and says, you said this to me. And I'm like, oh, okay. I need to pay more attention to that.
Yeah, yeah. The power that we have, right, when we have the position of
Mm-hmm.
influence within people's minds and the way that they're thinking and carrying on with their business and everything else, right? Such an incredible trust that they place within us,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
also we have to be very mindful of that. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
No, that's right. Yeah. If we're not
Great.
moving, kindness doesn't really cost us anything.
No, that's right.
In the
Yeah,
long run, it doesn't. So it's worth doing, and it reaps
yeah,
results.
yeah. Completely. Well, I thank you so much, Dennis, for sharing this with me. If you, wanted to give somebody a means to reach out to you, what is the best way to do that? Is that LinkedIn? Is that email? Is that go to the website? Where do we send people that
Yeah.
want to connect?
They could find me on, LinkedIn under Dennis Humphrey. Um, or they could go to our website, edenbusinessconcepts.com. And if they wanted to learn more about the motivations, they could go to the resources page, and there's a couple PDFs there they could download. But always happy they have people reach out. I'm glad to have a conversation. And hey, if I can't help you directly, I'm going to try to connect you to someone that can.
Yeah. Yeah, living what you just talked about. So, thank you so much. I really appreciate it, Dennis. And for those of you who are listening to this episode and really enjoyed this, you can check out our archives where you're going to find all sorts of different advice and entrepreneurial journeys that other people have shared with us over at amplifyyourbusiness.ca. And of course, you can find us on all your major podcasting platforms. Just search Amplify Your Business there. Give us a like, give us a share. Definitely appreciate it as we continue to build this entrepreneurial community that we have started here at Amplify Your Business. So thank you for listening. Thank you again, Dennis. I really appreciate your time, your expertise, and for your sharing. And for everybody else out there, have a prosperous day.